Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this fine world. You are listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. Today's episode is a guest interview, and my guest is a gentleman named Alex Goldfayn. Alex is the author of a Wall Street Journal bestseller called Selling Boldly. Alex is a person that I met via LinkedIn. I found his book. I learned a little bit more about him, sent him a message on LinkedIn. He and I hopped on the phone. The more we talked, the more we clicked. And I said, Alex, you got to come on the Startup Selling Show with me. And so he so graciously agreed to do that. So let me tell you a little bit about what we covered in our conversation together just now. So the biggest part about what Alex does is focusing on getting you, the startup seller, to think through positive communication that you can do to increase your sales. So as he described, most of the communication we're doing in our selling day-to-day is what he considers to be lazy or low risk. And what we want to do is migrate away from the lazy, low risk types of communication and instead focus on what he calls human interaction. And so we dove into a lot of very specific strategies on how you can call and develop what he calls friendlies. And by doing that, you're going to increase the positive psychology of yourself as you're going out and doing your selling. And more importantly, you're going to increase your sales. He outlines some of what we talked about in the podcast conversation today in his book, Selling Boldly. You should definitely go check that out on Amazon. The most important thing I think that I also want to highlight here is that what he describes is extremely simple to do. And it's something that as you listen to our conversation, you'll probably say to yourself, like, wow, that's really simple. And man, I could probably totally do that. However, most of us are not doing what he describes simply out of fear or procrastination. And so we talked about some other specific strategies that you can use to get through some of the fear you might have about having more positive human interactions and positive and human conversations with the people in your marketplace. So that's why I had Alex on the phone on the podcast interview, because I wanted to have him talk through how he works with large companies and their sales teams to implement some of these strategies and how you can use these very same strategies that he uses with large companies with your startup and with your teams every single day as you're growing and scaling your company. So that's it for now. We're going to get over to the conversation with Alex Goldfayn right now.
Hey, Alex. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So everyone listening, just as I mentioned at the top of the introduction here, with me today is Alex Goldfayn, who is the author of 4 different books. Most recently, his book, Selling Boldly, Applying the New Science of Positive Psychology to Dramatically Increase Your Confidence, Happiness, and Sales, is now a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And so Alex and I got to know each other a little bit over the last month or two. And I said, dude, you're doing some awesome stuff. I'd love to have you on the podcast for our audience. And he so graciously agreed. So here he is.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to your listeners. I think they're very smart to be listening to you, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'd just like to jump right in. I've got lots of questions here in front of me on my iPad. I know we won't get to all of them. I think maybe the first thing that we could ask you about, and just to have you opine about or give us your perspective on this, is the book Selling Boldly, and before that you wrote the book The Revenue Growth Habit. What is your perspective, or how do you think about sales? Like, what is your driving force behind how you want to help other people, other companies build and grow and drive their sales process?
So I think sales is a matter of communicating. And if we want to grow sales, we need to communicate some more, because the more that customers and prospects hear from us, the more they buy from us. And the less that customers and prospects hear from us, the less they buy from us. And it never goes the other way, right? Like the streams never cross. You can never communicate less and sell more. It doesn't work that way. And that sounds really, really simple, like absurdly simple. That's because it is. It's not hard to grow sales when you zoom out, when you extract yourself from the muck of your day-to-day business life. I know a lot of your listeners sell technology. They make technology, database, software, they make things that are technical, and then they sell them to other companies, right? To businesses. Am I accurate there?
Absolutely, yeah.
So the work is, interesting and compelling, and, they're inventing things that are helping people. And then we have to go out into the world and actually tell customers and prospects how this product or products are going to improve their lives and their companies. And so that is, when you ask me, how do I think about sales? I think about sales as a matter of being really easy to grow. And the way to do that is to communicate systematically, consistently, all the time with people who can pay you.
And so the communication, I do want to dig into this quite a bit, because when I think, I guess a lot of times when I think about communication, and I'm probably sure a lot of people are listening, when there's so many technology tools available to automate email campaigns, or you can hire an outsourced team to pick up the phone and call and do whatever that's cold calling or other types of outbound work. There's social media. There's no shortage of ways to communicate. But I also I've seen this over and over and over as a company founder. I get emails all the time, and people are trying to communicate with me, but the communication isn't the kind of communication that I want.
Right.
So can you tell us more about, when you say communication, dive more what is effective communication versus just communicating for the sake of pushing the send button?
So that's a fabulous question. Most of the communication that is out there now, meaning most of the communication that our listeners right now are up against, are competing against for attention. And also perhaps most of the communications our listeners might be making themselves right now to customers and prospects, potentially.
Sure.
Most of these communications tend to be, my 9-year-old son has taught me to say no offense before saying something that might be offensive, okay? So no offense, but most communications tend to be kind of on the lazy side, and they tend to be kind of low risk. We make low risk communications. For example, we send a lot of LinkedIn messages, right? How many LinkedIn emails do you get from people that say, you don't have to pay me unless I generate results for you, right? So just random cold call, not even emails, but LinkedIn messages. We get a lot of cold emails, even from people that we know. We get emails that aren't useful or interesting. So when I say communicate, Scott, I'm talking about human communication. Give me human interaction. Call somebody who knows your name and whose name you know. Not a cold call. I'm not advocating for cold calling, because I don't think that's a good way to live. I'm saying call Friendlies. Write to Friendlies. Visit with Friendlies. Meet with them. Go to where they are. If you need more Friendlies, you're a startup. You don't know that many Friendlies. Let's talk about how do we develop Friendlies without cold calling. How do we find them through other people who we know and who know us, through referrals, through recommendation. And here again, I'm talking about human referrals and recommendations, not LinkedIn-enabled referrals and recommendation. So we want to do things that others aren't doing. Now, we think that the customer's phone is ringing off the hook, right? With people like us who are calling this customer, trying to, sell to this person. The truth is, nobody's really calling. People don't call. The phone is not ringing with proactive communications from people who have a wonderful product like our listeners have right now, right? As they sit here listening to this, they have fantastic value to their customers, and their customers don't know. They don't know about it because we're not talking about it directly in a human way. So I had one CEO, a client of mine, who told me his supplier got a new president hired, and the president called my client, his customer, on his cell phone. And he said to me in these words, "It's the first time anybody's ever called me on this damn thing." That's exactly what he said. And I said, "Well, how did that go? Were you mad at him?" He goes, "No, we had a wonderful conversation." And I kid you not, he said, "I wish more people called me like this." So we think everybody's calling. Nobody's calling. We're the only ones when we pick up the phone.
So if I'm listening to this, I'm probably going, okay, this sounds pretty good. I'd love to have human conversations. I'd love to talk to Friendlies, because cold calling is a pretty shitty thing to do, pardon the French, but it's just not fun. It's intimidating. It doesn't work. It's lots of rejection. So you're telling me to call Friendlies, meet with Friendlies, visit with Friendlies, and that nobody's calling me. what's the first thing I should do? Like, how do I identify a friendly, and how do I pick up the phone so that I can replicate this anecdote that you just described to us and have that wonderful, positive conversation?
Well, the way you identify a friendly, again, is somebody who you know, and that doesn't mean you talk to them once a month, or even, you may have not talked to them in 2 years, but still, it's somebody who would recognize your name, Scott, right? So when you call them and you tell them, hey, this is Scott, how are you? How's your family, right? You can't do that with a cold call. So it has to be like a relationship phone call, and also a relationship email, by the way, but not cold, because that makes you like everybody else. That commoditizes you, right? That makes you, like you said at the outset of this question, it makes you somebody who people run away from. It's just sort of garbage, putting garbage into the stream here. And we want to provide value. So you identify friendlies by thinking through who do you know and who knows you. And then the conversation goes like this: Scott, it's Alex. It's been a while since we talked. I was thinking about you. So that's the first thing. When you tell somebody you were thinking about them, it's impossible for them to get mad at you. They can't do it. You're honoring them. And then you say to him, how's your family? How are the kids? It's been a while. What are they up to? How are things going? And then you say to him, listen, what are you working on these days that I might be able to help you with? The last time we talked about X or Y. How is that going? And then you gently pivot to your product, right? To your service, to what you're doing. This is all, by the way, detailed, including scripting, and all of this we're discussing is written out in great detail in my book, Selling Boldly, which you led off with.
Right. And so, again, I always try to think of myself like, okay, I'm listening to this and this sounds like great advice. What if it's somebody I met at a conference like a year ago and I really don't know them well enough to ask about their family? It almost feels like it would be disingenuous to say, oh, I know, hey, Alex, we met at the XYZ conference last July. Thinking about you. How's your family? Like, if I've never really had a conversation about their family, or I'm not that close to them.
Right. Well, if you don't know their family, don't say it.
Okay. But I just wanted to be sure to clarify on that.
Well, give me an alternative. What can you say to somebody if you don't know their family?
Well, I'd like the second question, or the second statement, which is like, hey, what are you working on? Or more specifically, you said like, hey, the last time we talked, you said you were working on this.
Yeah.
I think that is to me, it seems like very natural, because the last time we talked, if we met at a conference, I can say, hey, when the last time we talked, you mentioned that you were growing your sales team. I wanted to see how that was going.
That's right.
You mentioned you were launching a new product. How'd that launch go?
That's it. How's life? How's work? How's the launch? How's the team? Listen, people crave human interaction. My clients, look, so I work with manufacturers and distributors, and service companies too. And my clients grow by 10 to 20% every year they do this stuff we're talking about here. So my clients add 10 to 20% annually every year, as long as they do this work that we're discussing. And so sometimes I do a lot of speeches, I do a lot of workshops, and both for clients, meaning staff, customer-facing people, but also for associations and executive groups where the audience is made up of multiple different companies that aren't working with me. And so people frequently ask, well, as the young people come into the business who don't use the phone, who are totally used to electronic communication, isn't this phone calling and human interaction kind of going to be less effective? And isn't it indeed going to not work anymore? And my answer is, those people are human too. If you're listening to this right now and you're young, my experience is you don't get a lot of phone calls in your life. You don't get a lot of human interaction, like relationship interaction. And I'll tell you because I teach salespeople how to do this, and customer service people too. Young people eat this stuff up. Young people fly with this stuff.
And why is that?
It's just not something that they've ever been talked to about. It's not something that perhaps that they've been asked to do before. It's just assumed that they don't want to. They don't want to use the phone. They don't want to talk. But I always say it's not true. In this program that I roll out and install for my clients, the truth is young people, of all the people, are the most successful ones with it. They do the best. They grow the most. They grow by 50%. They grow by 100%. Some of them triple their sales individually because they're given a simple system, a simple process to communicate with customers and prospects more.
That makes a lot of sense. Like I'm looking at, if you go to your website, which is your last name, right? GOLDFAYN.com. You've got a number of worksheets there. And one of the worksheets you have is a 1-page sales planner.
Yeah.
You've got different types of action there, like a proactive call, a did you know question, a backup reserve, did you know question, a handwritten note, post-delivery call, ask for referral. These are just different types of outbound calls you can make to either current customers or to Friendlies. What have you found if I'm afraid of myself doing, like, it sounds good, I know I should be doing this, I'm still kind of timid or I'm afraid, or whether I don't feel like I sound good on the phone, or I feel like I'm interrupting somebody's day, or I'm just a little bit scared of picking up the phone. How do you get somebody over that hurdle and help them feel more comfortable with taking this approach?
It's a smart question because fear is the reason we don't do these things, right? I mean, we've been talking for, 10 minutes or so. I haven't said anything yet that you or anybody listening don't already know. You know these things, but knowing is different than doing. So knowing what to do doesn't make us any money, right? We know a lot of things that we don't do. Knowing what to do won't make you $1. It's the doing that makes the money. So fear is the thing that keeps us from doing what we know we should do. And the way to overcome fear, there's a simple way, and this is in the book too. You can't just sit down at your desk and say, okay, I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't think I know what to say. I don't sound good. Plus, this person's probably not going to be very happy to hear from me. They get phone calls all day long. And plus, I kind of have negative interactions with customers whenever I talk to them, right? Because when do people call? Do customers call when they're happy? Hey, Scott, great job. That was awesome. Can I pay you more?
Right.
We don't get those calls, right? Customers only call when there's a problem or they need something urgently. Otherwise, they don't need to pick up the phone to call you, right? That's why they only call when something's wrong, because then it becomes urgent enough to do for them. So fear of all those things is the reason why we don't do what we know, which is talk to people more, communicate with people more, pick up the phone more. So to answer your question, here's what to do about it. We have to go to the customers who are happy and ask them what they're happy about. You have to understand our great value, and then we need to behave accordingly. Now, we started this conversation, and 99% of this call you and I are having here has been about behaving accordingly. But the first part of this, and accordingly means boldly, right? Confidently, optimistically, helpfully. But in order to be able to behave that way, we need to know our great value. We need to be aware of how good we are. And you can't sit down at your desk and write out, this is why I'm good, because that's weird and it won't work. You can't say, here's why I'm great. What you need to do is go to happy customers, and we have to know they're happy first before you go to them. And then you ask them, what are some of your favorite things about working with us? What do you like best? Just before we started this conversation, I was doing such a call for one of my clients, because it's a part of every project that I do. And we use the customer feedback, the deep, detailed customer insights. We use them as fuel to get people to see how good they are, and then ask them to do these things, which is pick up the phone, tell people about other products and services that you can offer them, ask them what else they're buying from others that you might be able to help them with, ask for referrals, follow up on proposals and quotes. These are the things that we need to do to grow sales, which are all very easy to do, and we already know we should do them, but we don't because of fear. And the way to deal with that is to talk to happy customers.
You brought me all the way back to my first real sales job 20 years ago when I was selling college textbooks for Prentice Hall Publishing. And I remember, I didn't know what I was doing. And my manager basically said, look, the first thing I want you to do for the first 2 months is just go around to the existing customers, people already using our books, and ask them why they use the books and what they like about them. Cool. And, I think that you just sort of attached the reason because what that did is it gave me a lot of confidence so that when it came time to actually go out and sell books to people who were not using our product, professors, educators, it was sort of like I had this sort of base of positive psychology, to use the subtitle of the book a little bit. Like, it's actually kind of fun to go talk to professors because they want to hear from me because I'm the Prentice Hall rep, because everybody else I've talked to that uses Prentice Hall books, they love it. Yeah. And the second thing he did is like, look, if you're ever having a bad day, on the out in the field, go over to what we call the career and technology departments. So these are like electronics technology and cooking and nurse practitioners. Community colleges oftentimes have these programs because we owned that market, like just owned that market, and everybody loved our book. So he's like, if you're going out and getting beat up in the chemistry department or the economics department, just take a day and go talk to the career and technology people, because it's just going to pump you up and make you feel good about what you're selling.
Right. That's great. And you probably don't remember, or maybe you do remember what they said 20 years ago at Prentice Hall to customers, but my bet is not one of them said to you that you have the highest quality inks in your books out of anybody. Or, I just love it how your pages turn compared to everybody else's. That's not what people talk about. And, I'm making a sort of dramatic example here, an absurd example. And, tying it back to our listeners now, if you ask your customers, what are some of your favorite things about working with us? Nobody will say you have the best damn programming code on the planet. Nobody will say, well, the hardware that they use to make the software is unbelievable. Their computers are the best. Their specs are the best. Nobody will say that. What they will say is, working with you is easy. The relationship is wonderful. You do what you say you're going to do. You listen. You're easy to reach. You call them back quickly. You're on time. You don't make them wait. And when they compare it to other vendors or suppliers or service providers that they're working with, they're going to say, those are the reasons that you are better than others. And those are the reasons that they keep working with you. And if we can marinate people, staff now, right? Just like you were asked to go marinate for 2 months in the positive feedback of Prentice Hall customers. Mm-hmm. If we can marinate customer-facing people in the positivity of happy customers, the confidence and the boldness and the happiness and the optimism and the gratitude that comes from that on its own, without doing anything, without teaching people any activities, without implementing any system, just the mindset shift alone will grow sales pretty much automatically, because then you won't be fearful. You won't hesitate. You won't procrastinate, right? Being afraid is very, very close in the same family. It might be a twin brother of procrastinating, right? Mm-hmm. Fear and procrastination are kind of one and the same. The reason we avoid things in life or work is fear, and avoiding things is procrastinating on things. So marinate in the positivity of your happy customers, and you will find yourself doing this very important and very easy work that your customers want from you. They will appreciate you doing it, and they will thank you with their money.
All right, folks, we are off and running in my conversation with Alex Goldfayn. Thank you so much for listening to the Startup Selling Show. While we've been talking to Alex about his book, Selling Boldly, I wanted to present to you an opportunity to get a copy of one of my books called Startup Selling. Startup Selling, How to Sell If You Really, Really Have to and Don't Know How. Yes, you can go to Amazon and buy a copy, or you can download a copy on your Kindle, but you can also get a totally free copy of this book. Not even free like, hey, it's free, but you have to pay shipping and handling. I mean, 100% totally free copy. And what we're doing is I'm offering a PDF download of the entire book from cover to cover, and offering it to you completely free of charge. So the only thing you need to do to get a copy of Startup Selling, How to Sell If You Really, Really Have to and Don't Know How, is to go over to startupselling.co, startupselling.co, and you should see a cover of the book there. Type in your email address so we know where to send the file, and you're good to go, and you'll have a copy of the book, one of the books that I've written. So I want to make sure that you get a copy of that, and I want to share that book with as many people as possible. So tell a friend or tell 10 friends about this opportunity to get a free book from me, free copy of my book. And I want to get as many copies of this book out as I can. So that's it for now. Let's jump back over to the conversation with Alex Goldfayn.
I love this, fans, because you also mentioned as like other follow-up questions you can ask. You said, like, what else could we be doing together? You asked about referrals, and then specifically talked about quotes. That question, particularly for our audience, like, what else could we be doing? Because it's such an important question, because as we're building our products, a lot of times the initial sales are a product that, for all intents and purposes, we're like, this is an incomplete product. It's not done, right? It's not an IBM mainframe that we built and are selling. It's like, here's a minimal viable product, or here's the first version of the product. And a lot of times, starting with what's going well, and then following up with, well, what else could we be doing, or what other platforms are using that you're not happy with might in fact inform us about our own product roadmap and help us capture business through upsells versus having to go and get the next new customer.
You're 1,000% correct. Let me give you some examples of this question. I call this the reverse did you know question. So the did you know question is when you say to customers, did you know we can also do this or that? So did you know that we can create software that will accomplish this for you? Or did you know we can also create that kind of software for you? A did you know question is you telling the customer what else you can do for them. A reverse did you know question is you asking the customer to tell you what else they need, right? And the amazing thing here, Scott, is that if you ask people, they will tell you. They actually tell you. Like, nobody ever says, no, I don't want you to make my life easier. I've never heard that once. My clients have asked hundreds of thousands of reverse did you know questions and probably millions of did you know questions. And not once did a customer say to any of my clients, I'd rather not have you help me today. I'd rather not you make my life easier today. Nobody's ever said that. So let me give you some examples of the reverse did you know question, because you were making a wonderful point just now. Number one, what else do you need that we can help you with? And then you don't talk because they're going to be thinking, because nobody's ever asked them this before. They've never been asked this question. So they need to think of an answer, right? It's not something they have an automatic answer for. So we need to be quiet and let them answer the question. What else do you need that my company can help you with? Number two, what's on your wish list? I had a client, as it pertains to our software. So I had a client ask one of his customers, a salesperson, stood up in a follow-up workshop. So we do one workshop, then we do a couple webinars, then we do another half-day workshop. And so a client stands up in the follow-up workshop. And he says, I asked my customer what's on her wish list, and she gave me a list of 24 things. And these are all things we could sell her. I said, how many have you sold? He said, only 10. I said, all right, we'll get to work. You've got 14 more to go.
Right.
But he sold her 10 new products that this customer is going to keep buying all the time, repeatedly, that he would never know that this customer needs. And further, this customer would never know that my client could sell it to her if he didn't ask the simple question, what's on your wish list? So number one is, what else do you need that my company can help you with? Number two is, what's on your wish list? Number three is, what are you buying elsewhere that I can help you with? I would like to help you with these things. What, you don't need two like me. One like me is enough. Let me help you with this.
Right.
Again, nobody hears this. So you're not imposing on them. You're not stepping on their toes. You're not annoying them. You're showing them that you care, that you're interested. And when you do that for people, again, they will thank you with their money.
I was thinking about the way that you're describing these kinds of questions. And I think a lot of times in sales, where obviously we want to sell our product and we want to sell to the problem that we've set out as a company to solve. And so a lot of the sales questions that we ask are based from our viewpoint of the world. This is our worldview of what our product does and the problem we want to solve and the kind of customers we want to go and help. These types of questions, it actually flips it over, and you're almost jumping into the organization that you're selling to and looking back at your company and saying, like, you tell me. It's a much more empathetic viewpoint of selling, as opposed to sort of the traditional approach of whatever a cold call or the cold communication is that we start at the top of the conversation with. Is that a fair way to think about this? Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I love the word empathy here, and not sure I've ever thought about it that way before, which is cool for me to consider. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's totally fair. And imagine the power of this kind of conversation with a customer for our listeners right now who make software or, IT related custom product for customers. Imagine power of this exchange where essentially the customer helps you to build the product for them, right? Helps you frame the product, helps you identify features that they need that, again, you can then charge them for. And you're not selling it to them. They're kind of selling it to you, aren't they? Right? They're kind of telling you, listen, this is what I need, but we have to put them in a position to give us that. And, hopefully now this comparison with what we're discussing here versus the stupid cold call or the dumb copied and pasted LinkedIn message, right? versus this kind of human interaction. Listen, I care about you. You're one of my best customers. What else do you need that we can put into this product for you? Tell me what we can do for you here. I'd like to help you more.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to extend this model a little bit in that I'm imagining almost concentric circles where you talked about different types of friendlies. And the first place to go, of course, is your current paying customers. So what if I've got a couple of current early customers and I've got a good relationship with them and I'm executing on this strategy with the current customers that I have? What would be sort of the next band or concentric circle out if I'm trying to work more into more friendlies, so to speak? So I have my customers. What would be, that's stage one. What would be stage 2 level of friendlies you might recommend?
Well, there's only 2 ways to grow sales, right? We can sell more to our existing customers, which is what you and I have been talking about. And then your next concentric circle would be, we need more customers. And so the next circle is titled prospects, right? Because your audience is startups, there's probably just that, new customers, newer customers, and there's only a few of them probably. And then there's prospects. Now, with longer established companies, we have different levels of customers, right? We have customers who are our biggest customers, and then we have mid-level customers, and then we have our smallest group of customers. And then the questions that I ask my clients, that this is the exercise we go through. And I don't know if you could tell here, but I never hold anything back. I share everything. In my book literally lays out what my clients pay me a whole lot of money to put them through and the program that I take my clients through. And I give everything out. I don't hold anything back. And people say, well, how can you do that? Aren't you costing yourself money? And my answer is no. I want you to do it yourself. But I also know, you don't need me for this because this stuff's not hard. But I also know, as we started with today, there's a difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it. So I don't worry about it. I don't hold anything back. So here are the questions. For an established company, we would look at the biggest customers, the medium-sized customers, the smallest ones, and which ones can buy more, which ones can grow more, right? And which of the mid-sized customers can graduate, can buy enough additionally to graduate into the group of large customers, right? And so if we move this model to the startup world, we have our core group of customers, our small group of customers. So the question there is, which ones of those, so you list them all, which one of them can buy more? Which ones of them can buy a lot more? And then, give me another level with which ones can buy more, but not a ton. They can't triple or quadruple, but they can buy more, but not that much more. So give me 2 groups there. And then we go to the prospects. So what are the top, you pick your number, 10, 20. What are our low-hanging fruit, top, most attractive, most wonderful prospects? And you identify them. And you think through who might you know there. So is it with startups, is it somewhere that you've worked before? Is it somewhere where you know somebody who works there now? And then if the answer to those first 2 questions is no, the third question is, who do I know that knows somebody there? Right? So who can refer me in? And this all needs to happen on a human level, not on a LinkedIn referral level. So that's, those, I think I've probably just named several further concentric circles that take you out. And so we identify your top prospects, and then give me another concentric circle around, okay, well, if they're not the hottest, lowest hanging fruit kinds of prospects, who's in the next group of prospects that I can develop into these hot, warm, live prospects? And then your next question is, where do these people gather, right? Where can I go where they are already? So you can do it that way. You can go to where they live, which is association meetings or executive forum groups, or perhaps your target is in the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe they're in the local Kiwanis or Rotary Club. Maybe they're a bank, and every bank in the world belongs to a Kiwanis or Rotary Club locally. So we can go to where they go, and then your next concentric circle would be, yes, I can go to where they go, but also can I gather them myself? How do I bring them together so that I'm the item of interest. I'm the topic of interest, right? Where I'm teaching them I'm giving them something valuable. I'm bringing them valuable insights or knowledge, and I can gather them in a room. Maybe there's drinks or maybe there's food, but they're coming to me. So there's all of these concentric circles, and all of these things I'm telling you here, again, are human interactions.
Yeah, so I was thinking just to kind of unpack a few of these things that you just mentioned, Alex. So like the second level connections, I think that's one that most of us can relate to, in that like I know somebody who knows the person I want to get in touch with, whether it's at the big bank or at the government channel that I'm trying to sell to. I think that the difference between what you're describing and what a lot of people are doing is it's like, I'm going to send an email and ask for an introduction instead of the human pick up the phone, call them, have a conversation, explain to them why you want to have the introduction. And from there, you're probably going to have a much higher success rate. Is that the way to think about it?
Yeah, you're exactly right. You can even think about the family that you have and that that either work at a company that you can help or know people who work at companies like this. So to the extent that we can bring it into the real world from email or LinkedIn, we're going to be far more effective. The reason, let me tell you the reason we go to LinkedIn and email over the phone and over human interaction. The reason we go there is that the rejection is less intimate and less personal. On the email, I've sent my email, I've succeeded. And if they reject us, essentially what happens is they're just silent. So they don't actually reject us to our face, right? We just don't hear back from people. And so that's less painful than me rejecting you into your ear hole, right? Because that's uncomfortable. It's intimate. It's into my head. And so we avoid, so here, get this. The salesperson's fear of rejection, and in this group, I'm now including owners and executives at the startups that are listening right now. Our fear of rejection is bigger than and more profound than our need to feed our families. So we will not make these communications. We will not ask for the business, for example, to avoid rejection and to avoid the risk of rejection, but also take away from ourselves any possibility of getting the business because we won't pick up the phone, we won't ask for the business. And so we'd rather avoid that risk, that potential of rejection, than give ourselves a chance to win the damn business. And that's how big our fear of rejection is.
So what do I do in a situation like, all right, I'm all geared up, I've got a plan, I know I should be doing these human interactions. I pick up the phone and I call people, and I like, if you're anything like me, when I do get a call, most of the time I screen it, right? So even if it's somebody who does recognize that I know, they may not know my phone number, or they just might not pick up the phone. Yeah. Is there a strategy around a certain type of voicemail? Do you follow up with a quick email or a text? Because it might take a couple of, you're not going to just go 10 for 10 and call 10 people and get 10 people.
For sure. In fact, you'll probably get voicemail most of the time, right? Today. So I always say, leave a message, let them hear your voice, say in the voicemail that you were thinking about them. And then I would make it short, I would make it quick, I wouldn't ramble, I would leave my number. And typically if I'm in sales mode, I will follow up with an email and a text as well, so that they get something in multiple medias, Okay. Certainly if you have a texting relationship with somebody, I think you should absolutely leverage that, as long as it's not going to upset them, if you know that's okay. But yeah, man, I would leave the message, because people are like, well, then it's just another voicemail. And my answer is no. They get to hear your voice and your name, and the competition isn't doing this. So for sure, 100% leave a voicemail.
And how specific should I be in that voicemail about the reason for the call?
Well, I think you be honest about the reason for the call. I was thinking about you. I wanted to catch up with you, and I wanted to get your take on a couple of things here.
Okay.
So, I don't know that I would talk about your specifications and the latest version number, 2.68 of your software. But I would say, look, I just want to catch up, want to hear your latest, and I will get your take on a couple of things I've got going on here. Just want to get your opinion.
No, I like that approach,
because that's actually what you want. You actually want their opinion,
and it's an easy script, and it's genuine. You're like, no, I really do want to get your opinion about a couple of things, or I do want to get your take or your perspective on some stuff I'm working on, whether it's your product or your company or that's in your view, in your front.
Yeah, right and look, if you're uncomfortable with it, the customer will feel that. They'll experience that discomfort. So make yourself as comfortable and as confident as you possibly can. And the way to do that, again, is to listen to your happy customers. Listen to, really understand how good you are. And so then what happens is the customer is lucky that I'm calling them. I'm not lucky they're picking up the phone, but how lucky are they that I'm bringing my great value to them? And when you have that mindset, man, the voicemail becomes really easy to leave. You just know what to say. You don't even have to ask what to say. You just know what to say.
Yeah, people want to hear from you. And I always tell our clients that, look, you've dedicated your life to solving a very specific problem. You've given up a lot, and you probably know more about this problem than anybody, and people need to hear from you. There's a reason you started your company. You've got a mission, you've got a vision. And if you're not out there talking to people, it's a huge disservice to the whole community that you want to affect. So
totally. You're hurting them. Yeah. I like the word disservice there, because you're literally hurting them. Like, you're harming their business by not offering them your great value. If we're in the world to help each other, and you've got this amazing help for people, and fear is keeping you from offering it, you're not only hurting yourself and your family, you're hurting them and their family, the customer.
Right. All right, Alex, listen, I know that we're coming up to the time that you've got available, and we really, really appreciate you coming on the show. I always like to ask folks, you mentioned obviously the book, and I mentioned it's Selling Boldly. You've got, people can just go to Amazon and search you and find the 4 books that you have written. What are some other places that people can go? Or where was one place, if you say, look, go do this one thing to take action on some of the stuff we've talked about, where would you want them to go?
Yeah, so my website is kind of the place where everything is that I do. So you can go to goldfayn.com, my last name. Goldfayn is Gold, and then F like Frank, AYN like Nancy. And so something that I've started, Scott, that might be interesting, and you could leave this in or edit it out, either way, whatever you feel. I started a Selling Boldly coaching program, and so Selling Boldly is the name of the book. And I don't do it individually, but it'll be in a group format, and it'll be a 6-month coaching program for 2019. So we start in January, we go through June, and this is the first time I've ever done something like this, because I'm always talking to people who are a little too small and kind of in the startup phase that you're talking about, and I've never really had anything for them. I have the system, but I've never really had a way for us to work together, and I've always wanted to help them, but I've never really had a good way. And so what this allows me to do is to put individuals, if you're just a salesperson listening to this, or if you're, a manager of business development solo, that wants to go through it, you could afford this program. It's open for whoever wants to sign up. Or if you're a company owner and you want to bring me 4 people, you can do that too. But I've never had anything to work with you directly before. And this is a group program where people will be from multiple companies, and you'll go through the same 6-month project that my large corporate clients do with me. And you'll just do it as a group. You'll sign up individually. And so that's detailed on my website under 2019 coaching.
Okay. No, I think that makes good sense. Our coaching programs are also in a group format. They're different structure than what, the sort of the stuff that you teach. And I always tell folks, like, look, I was on the phone with a startup founder yesterday morning. And I said, look, if you look at every successful or most successful people out there, everyone from Bill Clinton, he used Tony Robbins as a coach. If you look at the founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey, they were brought John Doerr, who was a major early investor. He assigned a guy named Bill Campbell, who most people in the world never heard of Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell is one of the most successful executive coaches, and he coached Larry and Sergey in the early days of Google. Roger Federer has a coach. Like, most successful people have a coach. And so whether it's working with you or working with me or working with somebody else, I think it's too many people feel like, if I'm getting a coach, maybe it's because it's like a sign of weakness that I need help. And I always feel like, no, it's a sign of strength, because what you're doing is saying, like, it's okay to go get expert opinions and go work with other people to figure out what are my blind spots. How do I implement some of these strategies? So whether it's your program, my program, or some other program, I think getting a coach is one of the most important things that anyone running a startup can do, because it's only going to help them if it's the right coach and it's the right program, and if it's the right fit, then they should absolutely go. And
well, they should definitely work with you. And then if they have any money left over after that, they can look at my website.
well, here's something we can do. We actually come up with maybe a package deal for folks, because there's a specific reason I wanted to have you on the show, because of what you do, the specialization of what you do, and the work that you've done with large companies and how effective it's been. I think just like you've identified yourself, like this is not useful only for, Fortune 500 companies. This is useful for anyone, whether it's a startup or a small company, whoever. And, you and I haven't talked about this, but I could certainly see a situation where, if somebody's interested in working with you and working with me, let's put it together and give them everything that they need. So I love that you're doing this. I think it's a huge boost to people out there to see a way to actually implement this. And even if they don't, at a minimum, just go get a copy of the book. Because like you said, like everything that you teach is in the book. So just go treat it like a recipe and follow it page by page. And if you do what Alex is describing, you're going to increase your sales and your revenue. And most importantly, I think you're going to increase your confidence in how you're going about selling in your market.
That's great. Well, that's all very kind and generous of you to say, and I'm grateful, Scott, for that really cool endorsement, and also I really, really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate it a whole lot.
Absolutely. Well, no, I'm really glad that we had a chance to make it happen. I know your schedule's really tight. You're super busy with lots of stuff, and glad we can get it to work. So we'll get. I'm taking a ton of notes here. We'll get all those into the show notes, including a link out to the book. But in the meantime, if you're listening, you can just go to Amazon or any place that sells books. Selling Boldly is the main title. Check it out. Alex Goldfayn, Goldfayn, and you'll be happy you did. So thanks so much for being on the program. Thanks for being on the show today, Alex.
Thank you very much.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to the Startup Selling Show with today's guest, Alex Goldfayn. I learned a lot about, like I do with most of our podcast guests, I learned a lot about why I'm doing certain things in my sales process each and every day. And I also really, really enjoyed some of the ways that Alex made it super, super simple to implement a lot of what he is discussing here and what he describes in his book, Selling Boldly, and some of his other books as well. A second book of his is called The Revenue Growth Habit, The Simple Art of Growing Your Business by 15% in 15 minutes per day. So tries to make things super easy for you and for me and for salespeople out there to implement these strategies. And much of what he describes are things that I know from personal experience, they do work. It's just a matter of getting over the fear and the procrastination of taking the action that you need to take to put these things into motion for you and your startup. So that's it for now. If you're still listening to this recording of this podcast, it tells me that you're probably enjoying the content. And so one of the things I would super, super appreciate is that if you would go over to iTunes or SoundCloud or wherever you are listening to the Startup Selling Show and leave a review and tell other people about the show. And then the second thing I'd love for you to do is tell a friend or 10 about the show as well. We're doing as best we can to keep bringing you huge amounts of value with guests and other content here on the Startup Selling Show. So the more that we can get the word out, the more that we see the downloads and the listenership and the subscriptions increase, the more it jazzes us, the more it gives us motivation to go out and do more of it. So please do tell a friend or 10 about the podcast, and please do leave a review on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you are listening to the show. So that's it for now. We'll call it a wrap. Thanks so much. This is Scott Sambucci signing off.